السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كيف حالكم جميعا يا أيها الإخوة وأخوات or brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, this is Yawm al-Sabt, which is corresponding to Saturday. By the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has returned our souls for those who are alive and amongst the living. By the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, we would like to bring a brief reminder by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, and explaining why we've chosen to name this title or select the title that there is no one answer for the current day challenges facing our youth in the era of Al-Harj. And we translated Al-Harj to be senseless killing. And the reason for this topic, by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, is that we see that there is a kathratul harj, there is abundance of senseless killing that is going on in this time. There are a lot of our youth that are have fallen victim to this senseless killing. There is a lot of answers and a lot of questions from parents and even from the community members, the leaders and the community members dealing within the community on how to combat this crisis that we see ourselves in within this era that we live in. And I wanted to just bring a brief reminder, not as an answer or even as a solution rather, but just a reminder, especially to us Muslims, because Allah Jalla wa Ala and His Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have given us key signs that will help us combat the coming days by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So the context for this particular talk will be taken from an illustrious book which is known as the book which is Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, which inside this illustrious book we have the chapter which is known as Kitab al-Fitan, the book of trials and tribulations. And there are some hadiths that I want to bring as a reminder for our time that we live in, with the commentary of our Shaykh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. But before beginning, we want to remind the Muslims, especially the Muslims, that we must understand that nothing happens in this dunya and nothing will take place in this dunya except by the decree of Allah. And this is very vital for the Muslim, because the answers that lies in the Quran and the Sunnah and the guidance that's found in the Kitab wa Sunnah, it helps us in this era that deals with a high rise of mental illness. We live in an era where mental illness is on an all-time rise, where depression, stress is on an all-time rise. The Quran and Sunnah gives us that balance mentally, and it stabilizes us, and it gives us a perspective to look at things in its true reality and to be able to face it in its true reality, with the mindset that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one in total control of everything. And this is something that the muwahid, the one who practices, the practitioner of that tawheed, must understand. And this is the difference between them and us, and why you see in their generation, in the prophetic generation, which is in those illustrious 3 generations, you see how they were able to deal with the crisis that have arisen during their time, because they had the Kitab wa Sunnah and the right outlook or perspective. That's what we need to return back to by the permission of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ أَن تَمُوتَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ كِتَابٍ مُؤَجَّلًا الآية. In Surah Ali Imran, which is the 3rd chapter of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after talking about the context of jihad and Muslims fighting in the way of Allah and people dying, Allah Jalla wa Ala also mentioning that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is just a messenger, and if he was slain like the messengers, some of the messengers before him, would you turn back on your heels? Allah reiterated to the believers that there is no soul or no person dies except by the permission of Allah and Allah's decree. Yes, we must understand this, because there is no such thing for the Muslims that such and such died before their time. And as many of us Muslims are saying this, and we're making statements that is against what Allah says in His book. We don't believe no person died before their time, whether it be a child, whether it be an infant, whether it be an elderly person, or whether it be a youth. We don't believe that. That's not our concept. Allah tells us that there is no soul that die except by the permission of Allah. Allah has decreed it, and kitaban mu'ajjala, which is important, an appointed term. In other words, that person, it was his or her time to go. The time slot that person have to be on this earth have been reached. And this is why Allah said kitaban mu'ajjala, that a person dies by that time. What does this allow us as Muslims to understand is that if we lose someone that we love, that is precious to us, then we understand that it was all in Allah's hands. Okay? Yes, it's tragic. Some people die tragically. Some people die violently. Some people die in ways that we are not pleased with. Everybody don't die in their sleep. Everybody don't have a peaceful death. And it's tragic. But nonetheless, we do what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ have done in his sunnah when he lost his son, Ibrahim. And we seen that the Prophet ﷺ's eyes was tearful, and we saw that his heart was sad. But he said, we only say that which pleases the Lord. This is from the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one who we are commanded to follow. As Allah said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in your messenger you have a beautiful example. So, Islam told us how to condone and send our condolences, and how to deal with the departure of a soul. Islam instructed us on how to deal with this, and this is some of the reasons why we want to go into this. The problems that's facing our youth in the era of Al-Harj, you must understand. In order for you to truly understand these signs, Allah Jalla wa Ala says in Surah Al-Qaf, which is a tremendous surah, which the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have recited it for 18 months, a year and a half, gave the same khutbah on this particular surah, which is the 50th chapter in the Quran, which begins the small section or the small short surahs in the Quran. He gave it without any explanation. He recited the surah, Surah Qaf. Allah said, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَذِكْرَى لِمَنْ كَانَ لَهُ قَلْبٌ أَوْ أَلْقَى السَّمْعَ وَهُوَ شَهِيدٌ. Allah said, indeed, this is a reminder for he who gives ear, for he who has a heart, and he who gives ear, and the one who is witness, meaning the one why he is not heedless. The reason why we brought this, because in this verse Allah gives us the etiquettes and what is understood of true istima', true hearing, not the hearing with just the ears. Lahu qalbun, he who has a heart. So the heart must be present when listening, not just the ears. Alqa sam'a, the one who is attentive, alert with both his heart, his mind, as well as his ears. Wa huwa shaheed, and he is not heedless. He is witness. He is ever present to the reminder. How many of us really listen with this understanding, with these characteristics, when we listen to the signs of Allah Jalla wa Ala and that of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as prophesied? There are three narrations that help us answer or help us, to understand better the crisis that we're facing. And that is the hadith that mentioned on the authority of Abu Musa, who he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this one here actually is on the authority of Abu Hurairah and the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he mentioned yataqarrabu zaman, that the time will become close, it will become near. وَيَنْقُصُ amal, and righteous actions, because amal here is not just talking about any actions, it's talking about righteous actions. Actions will be diminished, will decrease. وَيُلْقَ الشُّحْ, and miserliness and stinginess will actually be prevalent. وَتَظْهَرُ fitan, and trials and tribulations will appear. وَيَكْثَرُ harj, and there will be abundance of al-harj. And they said, the companions who were listening to the Prophet ﷺ, they say, Ya Rasulullah, ayyuma huwa, what is this harj? And the Prophet ﷺ responded in this particular version. He said, al-qatlu, murder. On the authority of Shaqiq, who said, I was with Abdullah and Abu Musa, and he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, before the hour, inna bayna yadi sa'a, there will be days wherein ignorance will descend and knowledge will be removed, and there will be abundance of harj, which is killing. Also, another narration that are similar in wording is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, on the authority of Ash'ari, that he said to Abdullah min ibn Mas'ud, تعلم أيام التي ذكر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أيام حرج نحوه. Do you know these days in which the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the ayyam, or the days of harj, and similar to it? Ibn Mas'ud, he responded by saying, I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, the people that will be around during those days, min sharar an-nas, will be from the worst of people. Man tudrikuhum as-sa'ah, meaning the worst of people will be where the hour will reach them while they are alive. Shaykh Uthaymeen, he comments on this tremendous narration. He said that on the first hadith, where their fitan, trials and tribulations will appear, he said that fitan, brothers and sisters, can be good or evil. Most times when we hear the word fitan, which is the plural for the word fitna, we think of the evil. But fitna can also be used for good and not just for evil. Shaykh Uthaymeen quotes Allah saying, وَنَبَلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً, and we should test them and try them, Allah says in Surah Anbiya, with evil and good as a fitna. So Shaykh Uthaymeen said the fitna of good is when a person is tried therein to be appreciative and thankful to Allah Azza wa Jal. Whether or not he's going to be appreciative or thankful to Allah or not. Just as Sulaiman sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in that tremendous verse, he said, هَذَا مِنْ فَضْلِ رَبِّي, when Allah Jalla wa Ala gave him the throne of Bilqis, he said, this is from the bounty of my Lord, لِيَبْلُوَنِي أَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ, in way of testing me to see whether or not I'm going to be grateful or ungrateful. So the Shaykh Uthaymeen is saying that fitna here, when it's dealt with good, it is Allah testing the servant to see whether or not he's going to be thankful or unthankful, whether he's going to be grateful or ungrateful. As far as what is intended for the fitna of shar, then it is the fitna whereby the servant is tried in order to know whether he's going to be patient or impatient. Notice the difference. Whether he's going to be patient or impatient. The servant lives, as Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, he mentioned, the servant lives in between two states. Either some good is going to happen to the servant, some blessing is getting ready to descend for the servant, so then he should be thankful and appreciative to Allah Azza wa Jal for that good. or there's going to be some affliction or calamity that's about to befall the servant. Therefore, you have to be patient with the horns. This statement of Hassan al-Basri resembles the statement of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, "Ajaban lil amr al-mu'min." Amazing is the affair of the believer. If good happened to him, then he is thankful to Allah Azza wa Jal. And in asabahu dar or asabahu al-fitna, if some calamity or trial befalls him, then he is patient. And he said this is only in the case of the believer. So the two states that the servant is going to always go through. This is why we don't believe as Muslims, as Sheikh Salih Fawzan mentioned, that a person will be forever happy. No one is forever happy. There is no state of happiness in this dunya, in this life, that you're going to be forever happy. You're going to be in one state. No, you're going to go through ups and downs. That's how Allah decreed it. Allah said, indeed, indeed we created man to toil, to work hard. So you're going to go through one state of being up, and you're going to go through one state of being down. And that state of being up is when Allah is giving you a blessing, and that state of being down is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying you with a test. What does this have to do with our youth? What does this have to do with the current challenges? It has to do with a lot, by the permission of Allah. First and foremost, we have to go back and review. Ibn Qayyim, he mentioned that the demise of the children starts with the parents. And I'm not here to lay blame at all of us, but I'm here to, by the permission of Allah, let's just put a microscope on ourselves. And let's just look at the time period that we live in. If you look at these hadiths that's being prophesied, the Prophet ﷺ said in the narration, he said, two things is going to take place in the era of Harj. He said, Yarfa'u ilm, knowledge is going to be removed, and ignorance is going to descend. Knowledge is going to be removed. What type of knowledge is going to be removed? Knowledge is going to be removed. And the opposite must happen, because if knowledge is removed, then that means ignorance is here. And if ignorance is here, that means knowledge is removed. So in that time period, there will not be those who understand properly, but a few. And Sheikh Uthaymeen is going to comment on what it meant by knowledge being removed. But for ourselves and as parents, just think about it in this time. How often are we in our act of ibadah and worship? Look at our household. Do our household resemble a household of a Muslim household? Let's just be honest with ourselves. How loose are we in terms of our adherence to the Quran and Sunnah? Where the jilbab and the thawb and the niqab and the kufi have become a thing of style. And that becomes something of style, something of fashion. This wasn't the focus. Wallahi talahi wallahi, I challenge any one of us, let's go back to the prophetic era of those 3 generations, and I want you to bring a narration where the focus was on the way their jilbab or their hijab or their khimar or their thawb or their khamis or any of those things was the focal point of how they dress. And many of you might say, this don't have nothing to do with it. It has a lot to do with it, because it shows us that our adherence to Islam has been external for the most part in this era and not eternal. We're focused on the outer aspects of Islam more so than the inner aspects, which ripples and trickles down to the way that we raise and cultivate our youth. If you look back at the children that was around the Prophet ﷺ, there wasn't a lot of hadith where the Prophet ﷺ gave them instruction after instruction, or he stood over them and was like this religious zealot, whereas though you have to do this or you have to do that. most often, or most of the times, you see that the Prophet ﷺ taught them by way of actions and examples. They was able to pick up on how to behave by way of their example, by the way that they dress. By the way that they saw the Prophet ﷺ behave, what he did more so than what he said. They were able to do that by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And the problem that faced them during that time was they were able to be children at the time period, to be children. And oftentimes we have a lot of components. That's why there is no one answer. We have a lot of components that wasn't present during their time that's present during our time in abundance. Okay? So yes, we do have the hip-hop culture. We do have the satellite TV. We do have the celebrities. We do have the immoral acts being glorified. We do have that. Henceforth, these hadiths have been prophesied to us to put us on better alert. But ignorance is in abundance, because our outer aspect is the focus and not the inward aspect like the Salaf was. They were more focused on their hearts, as Allah Jalla wa Ala mentioned in the Quran when he said, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا الْبَنُونَ, on the day when neither wealth nor children will benefit that person. Then Allah said, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, except for he who comes to Allah with a pure heart. What does this mean? Allah Jalla wa Ala is mentioning that the heart must be salim, sound, even when coming to Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Except that he who comes to Allah with a pure heart. The Prophet ﷺ, before he was given his commission, way before he was commissioned as a prophet, Jibril came to him when he was a child and cleansed his heart. This was something that Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentioned, that the state of the servant in the grave will be based, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, will be based, the state of the servant, how his condition will be in the grave will be based off the condition that he has in his heart. Sometimes we hear these statements and we say, well, that's a cool quote. Look how deep Ibn al-Qayyim was, or look how deep that quote was. But sometimes we don't listen with those things that we mentioned earlier. Giving heart. Sometimes we don't listen with those things that we were mentioning earlier. Give heart. Those things by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So these things happen. F1. Yes, sometimes we don't listen by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala to those things. Those three things that you must listen with. So when we hear these quotes and these words, sometimes what happens is it goes over our heads. In the sense of we don't understand truly what is being said. Your heart, brothers and sisters, is the inner the eternal thing that you should be focusing on. And if you have a good heart, that's why the Prophet ﷺ said there is a piece of flesh in the body. If it is sound, then the whole body is sound. All of this goes back to your parenting. All of this goes back to you being a good person, being a good Muslim, being a good brother, being a good sister, being a good neighbor, being a good friend, being a good co-worker. All of this goes back to that. It's that heart. And if that heart is correct and it is sound and you focus on it, like in that prophetic era, then the offspring, by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, that you have will see that, and it will exude and will emanate to them, and it will carry on, and they will be able to walk with that. We're not focusing on the correct thing, and this is why we see most of the problems, because we don't have that correct thing as the focal point. That's what I wanted to bring there. Next thing we must understand, we also as Muslims, we are following behind the footsteps of those who should be following our footsteps. And this is true. So we cannot sit and say, okay, let's get a group of brothers together, let's rally, stop the violence, stop the killing. These things is okay. Yes, we have to do these things in our society. We have to try to combat it in any way we can. But these prophetic hadiths has been mentioning to you that there's going to come a time when these things are going to happen, and we are in that era, whether you want to believe it or not. The aql, the intellect, is going to go down gradually during that period, as Shaykh Uthaymeen mentioned next. He said, what is intended by fitan, by the speech of the author, Imam Bukhari, is the fitan of evil. And that is what's mentioned in these three hadiths. And those three affairs is the removal, or the descendant of ignorance. Second, the removal of knowledge. And thirdly, Al-Harj. So, Harj doesn't take place, senseless killing doesn't take place when knowledge is present. Okay? When ignorance is low. Pay attention. Senseless killing that we see this happening right now take place when knowledge is removed. Okay? When ignorance has descended. This is when these become the precipice or the recipe for Harj, senseless killing, to take place. He says, as far as the removal of knowledge, then it is the death of the scholars. As we mentioned in that authenticated hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْزِعُ عِلْمَ انْتِزَاعًا مِنْ صُدُورِ الرِّجَالِ. That indeed Allah does not remove knowledge altogether from the breasts of men. وَإِنَّمَا يَقْوِدِهِ بِقَبْدِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. In this version, he said, he only remove it by way of removing the ulama, meaning when the ulama pass away. And then, وَإِذَا قُبِدَ الْعُلَمَاءِ, when the ulama, the people of knowledge, are removed and they pass away, then the people will take as leaders the ignorant ones, and they will give rulings and verdicts without knowledge, and they will be astray and they will lead others astray. These narrations have been mentioned. How many of us are listening with our heart and our ears and being present? Again, وَنُزُولُ جَهْوَ رَفَ الْعِلْمُ مُتَلَازِمًا. He says, so when ignorance descends, knowledge is removed. It's binding. It happened, like as we said earlier. Knowledge cannot be removed except that ignorance will descend. Ignorance can't descend except that knowledge is removed. Okay? He said, as for Harj, then it is the killing that the Prophet ﷺ explained in another narration, where he said that this abundance of Harj means فَلَا يَدْرِ قَاتِلْ فِي مَا قَاتِلْ وَلَا مَقْتُولْ فِي مَا قُتِلْ. Meaning that the person who's doing the killing, the murderer, doesn't even know the reasons why he's killing someone. How many reports that we have someone got in an argument or a dispute years back over a car fender? It was a bent inside the car fender, right? Inside that car fender, a person got in an argument with another person, and it resulted into a person shooting the person, literally shooting her. How many times now, if you look in present day news, where a track star is being killed, or a youth being shot, or someone being stabbed, or a child being killed, and 9 times out of 10, if you were to question, as the Sheikh goes on to say, if you was to question, first he said that this is actually present now, so this is not coming from me. He said that this هذا موجود وأنا بكثرة. He said this is present in abundance now. All right. He said also, he said how many stories we done heard that you see a person transgressing against another person to the point that it leads to murder. An individual kills a person for no reason, no apparent reason. They cannot explain. Yes, there are multiple components that are present. Yes, like the massive drugs. Drugs play a part, brothers and sisters, in the in this system and moving towards senseless killing. But that's not the crux. The crux is given here in this hadith: the removal of knowledge and the descendants of ignorance. But drugs plays a major part. And how many of our youth are on drugs, are intoxicated some way or other? How many of our youth are on drugs constantly? And you're going to find that that plays a part. But the removal of knowledge is the main part. And then he continues. He says that the person don't know the reason why or what drove him to kill him. As our brother said eloquently, there is no motive. There is no motive. We don't even know why you killed so-and-so. What was your reason of killing so-and-so? You felt the need to take a life unlawfully, unjustly. Just take a life. Remove someone's life with no qualms, no worry, no nothing. Again, the Prophet ﷺ prophesied this. Okay? Now you must understand, when this happens, brothers and sisters, the era that we live in right now, the aql, okay, which is in the heart, is not fully there. I mean, never Lord reward us all. The aql is not fully there. We are not working with a full deck in this era. This generation is not working with a full deck. So you cannot hold them to the standards of a full deck, of a person who have full intellect. We ain't working with it. Even the intellectuals from amongst us have a deficiency in regards to their intellect. What's my proof? In the hadith of Hudayfa ibn Yaman, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where he asked the Prophet ﷺ about the fitna, because many people will ask about good. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that there's going to come a time of khair, but in that time of good, there's going to be wafihi dahin. It's going to be tainted. There's going to be some taint in that good. It's going to be remnants of good. It's going to be people who are here and hold to good, that's going to fight for good, but they're not going to be the majority. And inside that good, there's going to be some taint. Just look at yourself and see how often you are able to carry out a act of ibadah or act of good or kind to someone without it being distorted in some type of way. For example, you wanted to do something good for someone, and you wanted to speak to someone kind, but the advice you were giving to them didn't come out the right way. Your delivery wasn't on point. The way you approached them wasn't on point. You had all good intentions to do the act right, but there was something that was missing from it, that wasn't carried out correctly. How often is this the case with all of us? So even now there's a deficiency, and I wanted to mention that because you have to understand what you're dealing with. So if we're not working with a full deck, and we're not close to that prophetic era, we're in the era of Al-Harj, senseless killing, then we know how to combat this stuff in a way that is right. Okay? Yes, and that's what he said. I like to ask about the evil for fear that it overtakes me. And he mentioned, and continuing, he said, وَهَذَا يَكُونَ. Now look what he said. He said, لِأَنَّ النَّاسِ يُشْعُقُولُ وَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Because the people during that time, their intellect is going to gradually go down. And this is what Sheikh Falah was alluding to when you read the ahadith, which are actually mentioned in the book of Fitan, about the Dajjal, the false Antichrist. Why you think people are going to follow the false Antichrist? It's because their intellect is not going to be there. During that time, Sheikh Falah mentioned that they're going to be like in a fervent state. That you're going to see them like, you know how like back in the medieval terms, they had like a witch hunt when they wanted blood, and they wanted to hang someone or crucify someone. Everyone was just fevered with blood, and their mind was just driven with madness, and all they can see is that, yeah, let's hang this person. And it was this big cry out. This is what normally you're going to see with a lot of people. They're not even going to analyze whether the right of it or the wrong of it, the harm of it or the benefit of it. They're not even going to be differentiate between that. They're just going to want, it's going to be like a bloodlust. They're going to be driven by that soul madness because the intellect is actually going to be removed. And this is what the Shaykh said here. He said, وَلِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ حَتَّى يَسْبِهُ بِلَا أُكُولُ وَلَا يَدْرُونَ مَاذَا يَعْمَلُونَ. He said to the point that they're going to become like people who do not have any intellect at all, and they do not know what they're doing. That's the state that it's going to reach. That's the state that it's going to reach. He said, وَهَذَا يَكُونَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ سَاعَةٍ. And this is something that's going to be before the time of the hour. وَمَعْنَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهَا أَنُّ قَرِيبٌ مِنْهَا. What does mean before it? Meaning it's going to be close to it. وَهُوَ قَرِيبٌ مِنْ أَشْرَاطِ الْكُبْرَى. He said because it's going to be close to those major portions of the hour that's going to be taking place. He said, وَكَذَلِكَ أَيْضًا كَثْرَةُ الْمَالِ. Likewise, from the sign that's going to approach before the hour comes, is going to be abundance of wealth. Money is overflowing. How many entertainers have money? I mean, they gave, when he was alive, Michael Jackson's $30 million to do one show. And believe it or not, 75 to 90% of America is impoverished. They don't show you that. If you go through the rural areas, and you go throughout, as it was a study made by from some non-believers, as I was reading the book in a coffee shop one time, and they had went around and they did the polls and showing you how impoverished America really is. And the entertainers and, you know, not just the business owners or so forth, they have so amount of money, but there are people starving. There are people who are destitute. And for someone to use the argument that poverty does not play a role in the current day challenge or the current day crisis that faces our youth, then they are incorrect. Because Allah Jalla wa Ala, He says that one of the tools that the shaitan used to inspire or to incite inside someone is poverty. يَعِيدُكُمُ الْفَقْرُ يَعِيدُكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَقْرًا. Shaitan incites them and promises them, or he threatens them with what? Faqr, poverty. When a person believes that they don't have and that they don't got it, in those circumstances, they feel like they're back against the wall, so they behave in an animalistic nature, and they do things that if they had the comfort and those things were present, it wouldn't be done. So yes, poverty do play a part, and this is why you hear the statement of Umar ibn Khattab, that if poverty was a man, I would kill him. I would have taken a knife, I would have taken a sword, and I would have killed poverty, because it plays a major part on your mental state, on your health, on your stability in life. So we're not going to act like it's not a factor. It is a factor. And this talk, again, is not an answer or a solution for our youth, but it's something for us to look at and to really ponder on these narrations, because we are close to the time, whether you believe it or not. بَلْ يُرِيدُ إِنسَانٌ لِيَفْجُرَ أَمَامَهُ. Allah said, indeed, man intends to do evil even with the time, in spite of the time that's in front of him. Okay? In spite of the time, in spite of the lesser hour, meaning his death, which you don't know when he's going to die. In spite of the fact that these signs are going around him, and he sees that the world is in a destructive state. There is no prophet here. Whenever you have a period where there is no prophet or there is no messenger, that's a dark period. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, before he came, they used to circumambulate the Kaaba naked, right? And they used to call this like the dark area. So Allah Jalla wa Ala, when He sent Muhammad back to Mecca and He was able to eradicate and abolish those idols, Allah said, He was reciting the verse جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. And when He mentioned that in Surah Isra, indeed truth have came, as He was knocking down the idols and abolishing those superstitions and those traditions that they were doing that was immoral. You look at our time right now. They have a time downtown during a month where the people ride around on bicycles, start naked. They get on these subways and they ride around even on bicycles throughout downtown with no clothes on whatsoever. Is this not madness? Where they have nude beaches. Is this not madness? This is madness. And you are looked at as insane or mad if you even frown down or frown upon or dislike or have a distaste for someone to dress indecent or indecently expose themselves like that. People are having open sex in the streets, in their cars, in public. These are the signs of the hour. These are the signs of the hour. I don't know. The believer don't believe that he had this huge amount of time. We don't believe like that. The believer characteristic is that they understand what's in front of them, and they prepare their hearts, and they make sure they hold firm to La ilaha illallah, and they make sure they hold firm to Muhammad Rasulullah, because as he's going to say next, look what's going to happen. He says that as far as the last hadith that is mentioned, when Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ said, from the evil of the worst of the people that the hour is going to reach while they are alive, meaning they are the worst of the people, that they are around when the hour reaches them, they are alive. The worst people, the hour is only going to reach the worst people who are alive. Allah is going to send a wind, okay? It's going to send a breeze. It's going to be real, that light. Anyone who has an atom's weight of Iman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to allow that to take them. The worst people is going to be left. Shaykh al-Uthaymeen said, فَهَؤُلَاءِ مِنْ شَرَارِ النَّاسِ. He said, this is all the worst of the people. These are the worst of the people. لِأَنَّهُمْ يَظْهُرُونَ فِي وَقْتٍ يُرْفَعْ فِيهِ عِلْمٍ. Because they are going to be present when knowledge is going to be removed. And ignorance is going to be that which is going to be the prevalent thing. حَتَّى, even to the point, أَنَّهُ لَا يُقَالْ, that it will not be said, Allah, Allah, وَلِيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. The name of Allah will not even be mentioned at this time. We are informed from the Prophet ﷺ that the first thing of the sign of the hour that will be taken away is trustworthiness. We can't even trust each other. Period. Let's stop. Spouses don't even trust each other. Family members, siblings don't even trust each other. We cannot trust each other. Stop ignoring the signs. Stop worrying about the outer appearance. Are you not hearing Allah Jalla wa Ala say, فَلَا تَغُرَّنَّكُمْ بِحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَلَا يَغُرَّنَّكُمْ بِالْغُرُورِ. Allah Jalla wa Ala said, do not be deceived. He said this multiple times throughout his book. By the life of this world. Do not be deceived by the chief deceiver. Because what you're thinking is a mirage. This dunya wasn't made to tadum, to last forever. It never was created for that purpose. So for you to believe that you're not intelligent, you're not an intelligent person to believe that this life that you live in right now is all be all, right? Or ends all. It's not that. This is not that type of life. This is a transitional period. You're going from one state to another. And the only thing that you can focus on, is your qalb. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except he who comes to Allah with a pure heart. Your heart is what you're going to focus on. And if you water your heart correctly with La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, with the correct ingredients of Kitab wa Sunnah, then inshallah your grave, which is why Uthman ibn Affan, as it reported that said, he didn't cry when they mentioned the paradise or the hellfire. So he was asked, oh, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, oh believer or commander of the faithful, how come when hellfire and paradise is mentioned you don't cry? But when you're at the graveyard and you mention about the grave, you cry. What did he say? He said, because rarely I heard the Prophet ﷺ said that if the servant, the first trial for the servant is when he's placed in his grave. And if he passed that, then everything else will be okay. This shows you their mindset, man. They wasn't worrying about whether or not I had the bangers Shayla on, or the niqab was black as a black, or my thawb was this, or my kufi was this way, or I attended this certain masjid, or I attended this, or I was rolling with these dais, or I was rolling with that. That wasn't the point. The point was, is my heart sound? Are we waking up in the morning asking ourselves that? Are we talking to our children and cultivating them on a sound heart? Okay? Death is promised to all of us. Some of us going to die violently, some of us going to die tragic. It's a tragic thing. But think about it. Are we preparing our youth for a sound heart? Are we preparing ourselves with a sound heart? That's the answer. Last but not least, the Shaykh says, during this time, وَلِيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ وَيُرْفَعْ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ عَنِ الْأَرْضِ, everything should be removed that is good from the earth. He said, فَتَكُومُ سَاعَ لَقَوْمٍ لَا يَعْرِفُونَ, and the hour will be established on a people who do not know Allah. لَا يَعْرِفُونَ Allah, they do not know Allah. And he said, فَهُمْ شَرَارُ الْخَلْقِ, and these are the worst of the people who do not even know the one who created them. And then he said, so a person might ask, a question might come and say, have it not been authentically reported from the Prophet ﷺ that he said that there will not cease to be a group from my ummah upon the truth? Okay, they are supporters of the truth, and that no harm will come to them until Allah Jalla wa Ala, to the command of Allah, come and one version until the hour is established. So what is the answer? So if the worst people is going to be on the earth, other words, what about this authentic narration that there will not cease to be a people until the hour is established? It would seem like there is a contradiction here. You're saying that the hour will not reach except the worst of the people. And in another narration, there will not cease to be a group that's victorious upon the truth. No harm will come to them until the hour is established. So it seemed like there is a contradiction. The Shaykh responded. He said that the ulama, the people of knowledge, may Allah have mercy upon them, they said, هَؤُلَاءُ طَائِفَ قَلِيلَ بِنِسْبَةِ لِشِرَاءِ الْقَلْبِ. He said that this group, they will be few in relation to the worst of creation. Okay? فَهِيَ كَأَدَمْ. So their fewness, how less there will be of them, is like they're non-existent. Or what's intended by the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, حَتَّى تَكُومُ السَّاعَةِ. The Shaykh responded, no. حَتَّى تَكُومُ السَّاعَةِ, until the hour is established. He said, حَتَّى يُقَارِبِ قِيَامُ السَّاعَةِ, meaning until the nearness of the hour is established. فَأَبْرَ بِقِيَامِ الْقُرْبِهِ. So what is understood here is that the qiyam, the standing, here is meaning the close relation. وهذا سائق في اللغة العربية. This is something that happens in the Arabic language. وهذا وجه أحسن من الذي قبله. And this angle here, or this perspective here, is better than what came before it. It is better than what's mentioned, what came before it. And alhamdulillah, you see how the ulama, they deal with these issues. Shaykh Uthaymeen did not respond with his own opinion. He responded with that of what the ulama of past have mentioned about the issue, showing that the ulama will resort back to those who have preceded them. And that is a beautiful point. But brothers and sisters, our youth are facing a challenge that we ourselves are facing the same challenge. And the only way for us to try to get a handle on it is to start to look at things from the perspective or through the lens of Kitab wa Sunnah. Look at these narrations and listen to them with your heart, your ears, and spirituality. And try to revive your spirituality. Try to revive that point. Don't just do stuff robotically. Just because a group of people are doing it, or just because I'm Muslim and this is supposed to be accepted of me. No, do it with ruh. Do it with the spirit of iman. Do it because you are pleased. You don't know how often I have felt off, that I'm not where I used to be. And I'm talking about myself. Where's the adhkar? How many of us wake up with the adhkar? The morning and the evening supplications. How often do we do ad-da'iyah? Dua. How often do we make dua? How often do we teach our children to make dua? When you look at those narrations where the Prophet ﷺ was teaching the youth, he was teaching them dua. He was teaching them things that they can say and do that will bring them closer to Allah. How often do we do that? These are the ruh iman that we are missing. When we step forth inside a masjid, none of those thoughts of our mind should be, what are they upon? What is this? What is that? None of that should be that. You have to check your intention why you go to the masjid. The hadith is clear. He who makes wudu completely in his home, and he stepped forth to go forth to the masjid with nothing in his intention but for the prayer. That's what he goes to the masjid for. These hadiths are authentic, brothers and sisters, and I think we're overlooking them. And this is the reason why we are focusing on the external and not the eternal. So our hearts are not being properly prepared, and on top of that, we are not properly listening. So our youth are being dragged by the wayside, and when a tragic event happens, when death happens, which is going to happen because we're in an ignorant period, which the Prophet ﷺ already told you, senseless killing is going to happen. You have to arm yourself with the correct knowledge. And you have to train and properly train our youth and ourselves how to become better people. That's what Islam is about. Being a better person. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتِمَّ أَخْلَاقَ. I have been sent only to perfect the moral character. The moral character. How to be a better human being. That's what Islam is about. Knowledge is not about, look at the ayahs, brothers and sisters. Knowledge is not about who have the white soul, who can quote the most Arabic, who understand them, who can quote the most narrations, who can, who sat with this sheikh, who sat with that sheikh. That's not knowledge. That's not what Islam is about. It's about making us better human beings to interact with one another, period. How to interact with our Lord, how to interact with one another, how to interact with others who aren't Muslims. That's period. That's what Islam is about. And we have missed that point when all we're worrying about something else that is external. And then at the same time, when something tragic happened, we're sitting there saying, where are the leaders? Where are the community members? Why are we not getting together to help the youth? Where's the programs? Where's the procreation? No, the parent is the program. You don't want to believe it or not, but Ibn al-Qayyim already said it a long time ago. He said the demise of the children falls at the wayside of the parents. The parent is the program. There's no school that's the program for your children. There's no masjid that's the program for your children. You are the program for your children. As is mentioned, the last thing I will mention to you, hopefully it will serve as a reminder for myself and you all, is in Surah Al-Kahf. Allah mentioned about two different youth. One youth who was disobedient to his parents, so Allah Jalla wa'ala allowed Khidr to kill him. And then there was another youth, who are two youth, who by the righteousness of their parents, they were able to receive a treasure that Allah Jalla wa'ala allowed them to have, and it reached them when Allah decreed for them to reach him. Al-Harj, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the fifth Khalifa, he said, based on this ayah, he said, because Allah said, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, that really they had a righteous father. And because their father was righteous, this is where they inherit this treasure. Okay? He said, due to that verse, I have children, so based on that, I become a righteous parent because I have children. Because I have children, I had to step up. In other words, in layman terms, I had to step up my Islam because I had children. Okay? So the children is a product of you. What you teach in your household or allows to go in your household, allows to comes out of your household, is in reality is going to be what the children is going to have. And sadly, in our times, we got the mothers, they're supporting the children in all types of fisq. All things that go against the obedience of their creator, they're in support of it. Believe it or not, they are. They're in support of it. They're encouraging it. And then they use the statement, well, nobody judge me, none of us perfect. And then you wonder why things happen. And then all you can do is point the finger of everybody else, but not look at the fact that you are aiding and embedding your child to be upon fisq, disobedience. You have to look at that. You have to examine yourselves. We got to become better Muslims. Hopefully this will serve as a reminder to us all, by the permission of Allah Jalla wa'ala, not as an answer or solution. And for all those people who are tackling this problem and all those people who are losing their children, we ask our condolences are with you, and we ask Allah Jalla wa'ala to make your feet firm, and we ask also, inshallah ta'ala, to become strong, and let's support one another by going back to the matters of the heart, inshallah ta'ala, and so forth. Whatever we said that was incorrect in our translation is definitely from myself and the shaitan. Whatever we said is correct is from Allah Jalla wa'ala. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallah khair.